All right, so Martin Luther put up his grievances on the door of Wittenberg, and it wasn't intended for it to go global. He was a professor, and he was basically requesting other professors come debate me. Let's have a debate about this. Let's talk about this. So it was a request that was normally put on the door, to say, hey, I want to talk about this subject. And apparently somebody took it and printed it and passed it out. And it went to the common folk, and not, as well as the professors, but to the common folk. And so here we have our first viral social media. You put a Facebook post out there and it's grabbed by somebody and it's passed on and shared and shared and shared and shared. Well, that's what happened here. So here is the social media of the day, posting it on the door with the latest technology of the printing press, and it gets passed out and goes viral and changed everything. Changed everything. So we have a lot to look back on Martin Luther and how God used him. All right, so where did we leave off last week? Yom
Kippur War.
Yom Kippur War. Remember 1967, we had the Six-Day War. Israel was attacked by Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and we have where Israel got the Sinai Peninsula, got the West Bank, got the Golan Heights, got the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, got Jerusalem, all in the Six-Day War in 1967. After that, they tried to give the land back for peace to be recognized by all the other nations as a nation, but they rejected that due to the conference in Khartoum, Sudan, which said no peace for Israel, no negotiation with Israel, no recognition of Israel. And so here we have, leading up to this event, the president of Egypt, President Nasser, died in 1970. The new president, President Sadat, comes into power, and he wants to gain back the Sinai Peninsula. He wants to get his reputation back. He is also willing to negotiate with Israel, but he can't negotiate with Israel because of can't negotiate with Israel, right? So he's working through other means. He kind of severed some ties with the Soviet Union and was kind of working with the United States, but things weren't going as quickly as he wanted. So he comes up with this plan and works with Syria, who also wants to gain back Golden Heights. They try to work with Jordan. We'll go to the King Hussein. King Hussein goes, no, I remember what you did to me in 1967. You lied to me. I'm not going to be part of this. King Hussein actually goes to Prime Minister Golda Meir, tells her, I think there's going to be an attack on you. Golda Meir goes and says, I don't think so. And Israel in this moment in time is very confident. They won the Six-Day War. They decimated the Egyptian Air Force. They have the best army in the region. Why would anybody come attack us? And so she didn't quite believe what the King Hussein told her. So President Sadat has an ulterior motive than what he had told the Syrians. The plan was for the Syrians to attack the Golan Heights in the north, Egypt attack Sinai Peninsula, and then converge on, Israel proper. Well, Egypt had a different plan that they just wanted to get the Sinai Peninsula through diplomatic means, but in order to trigger diplomatic means, we're going to go in and take over part of Sinai, 7 miles from the Suez Canal, and stop. And that way, the world at large will condemn the attack and say, let's get everything back in order. Sinai Peninsula go back to Egypt, and we'll stop the war. And the way Egypt was going to do this was they're going to stay underneath the umbrella of their brand new surface-to-air missiles, which only can go out 7 miles, and stay underneath that so the Israeli Air Force can't attack them. And if when they attack by tanks, we got brand new Soviet anti-tank missiles. You're wondering, what does all this have to do with Bible stuff, right? Anyway, that's what goes on. On Yom Kippur, they attack Israel's most holiest day, and Israel faced a very bad 2 days where utter destruction occurred with Israel to the point that they were on the verge of being wiped out. being wiped out. Let me go to a video. This will explain everything in real fast. You're going to have to take real quick notes because this will go through the war real quickly, and then we'll highlight some miracles.
Well, Peter, it's very interesting. It's difficult because we're looking at...
Yes, right. That's right.
Yom Kippur War in 3 minutes.
In June 1967, Israel defeated the Arab neighbors in the Six-Day War and took the West Bank from Jordan, the Golan Heights from Syria, and the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza from Egypt.
They're repeating me.
Tried to negotiate the implementation of the peace resolution which ended the Six-Day War, but the Jari missions failed. So the small-scale fighting continued in the war of attrition until 1970, just before President Nasser of Egypt died. Nasser was replaced with Anwar Sadat, who broke away from Nasser's old policies. For instance, in 1972, he expelled thousands of troops and advisors from the Soviet Union, their chief weapon supplier. Meanwhile, in Syria, there was another coup, which saw al-Assad seize full power. Assad and Sadat quickly began to plan a war with Israel to reclaim their lost territory, legitimize their power, force the Cold War nations to put pressure on Israel, and curb the growing Saudi Islamist influence in the region. But they had lost the support of King Hussein of Jordan, who had just drove the autonomous PLO out of his nation in 1971. So, along with Gaddafi's Libya, they formed the Federation of Arab Republics and prepared for war. Throughout 1973, the two nations performed a series of training exercises along the border with Israel, but kept retreating, thus ensuring that Israel would not be alerted when they planned to strike. Israel had maintained the most powerful army in the region, so they also believed that Egypt and Syria were incapable of fighting the war, especially because they had limited support from the USSR and Arab states like Jordan. However, Israel's relationship with France and the UK had deteriorated, and the US warned them against launching a preemptive strike. Plus, they had largely been focused on crushing the PLO, notably after their athletes were killed at the Munich Olympics. So even though King Hussein warned the Israelis in September about the plans for the war, they did nothing to prepare. Syria and Egypt finally attacked on the 6th of October on Yom Kippur, a religious holiday of fasting and prayer. The Syrians invaded the Golan Heights with about 30,000 men and 800 tanks, mainly advancing south, while paratroopers captured Mount Hermon. In the Sinai, the Egyptians used artillery and water cannons to break through the defensive Bar-Lev line, and in a day, 800 tanks and 100,000 men crossed the Suez Canal. Despite being caught off guard, the Israelis did achieve some victories within these first 2 days. They defeated the Syrian Navy, and the outnumbered forces in the north of the Golan Heights managed to hold off the Syrian advance in the Valley of Tears for a few days. The Israelis tried to counter the Sinai on the 8th, but the Egyptians, who did not advance as expected, were still protected by artillery, so this ended in failure. However, Egypt's defensive position allowed the Israelis to focus on Syria. Israeli planes flew over neighboring countries, rendering Syrian anti-aircraft useless. Plus, with their reservists now mobilized, they could form a proper defensive line, and by the 9th, they started pushing the Syrians back. They continued to advance for the next few days and crossed into Syrian territory. The Egyptians tried to alleviate the pressure on Syria by attacking on the 14th, but without the cover of their artillery, they were soundly defeated. So, just 40 kilometers from Damascus, the Israelis established a front in Syria and focused on the Egyptians once again. Although the Syrians would receive troops from other Arab states, they were unable to break through for the remainder of the war. With thousands of troops now in the Sinai, the Israelis drove the Egyptians across the Suez Canal after costly battles, notably a Chinese farm, and cut the Egyptian forces in half. Plus, weapons started arriving from the US, which allowed Israel to maintain the momentum. And although their assault on Ismailia in the north ended in failure, they managed to advance quite far south. In response to their advance on the 17th, Arab states declared oil embargo on Israel's allies, starting an oil crisis. The Egyptians desperate to stop the advance fired the first ever Scud missiles at the Israelis, but they had little effect. So on the 22nd, a ceasefire was signed. However, this ceasefire was soon broken by who is still disputed, and the Israelis continued their advance south, reaching the city of Suez and completely encircling the Egyptian Third Army. With the potential destruction of the Egyptian Third Army, the Soviets stepped in and threatened to send their own troops into Egypt to protect them. And the United States, eager to gain influence in Egypt, pressured Israel to accept peace on October the 25th. In the aftermath of the war, the Israelis were angry that they had been caught off guard and pressured President Golda Meir to step down. But the Egyptians, although they had been pushed back, had their pride restored, and the war helped bring all nations to the negotiating table and start the peace process. The Egyptians would later recognize Israel in exchange for control of the Sinai Peninsula as part of the Camp David Accords in 1978. However, UN troops who were sent to the Syrian border after the war remain there today, and the status of the Palestinian territories remain disputed, to say the least.
Was that quick?
Did he breathe
You breathe, yeah. All right, so real quickly, going through, Egypt attacked this way, stopped 7 miles in. Syria attacks over here, comes on in. The first 2 days were very, very bad until Syria got upset with Egypt, saying, "What happened? You didn't go according to plan." Well, then Egypt, from pressure from the Soviet Union, came out from underneath the umbrella of the surface air vessels, and then Egypt got decimated. So Israel was able to push the Syrians back further into the Golan Heights and came within 10 miles of Damascus. Israel then crossed over the Suez Canal and came around here and was within 40 miles of Cairo and surrounded the third army of the third Egyptian army. And so that's where they came up with a peace negotiations and set a tent at the 110-kilometer mile marker between Suez, the city of Suez, and Cairo. And here they negotiated out in the middle of the desert in a tent. First time an Arab nation negotiated with Israel. So here are some numbers here on the side of how much more equipment the enemy had than Israel had. Israel was taken off guard, but the Lord sustained them. The Lord sustained them. Several miracles occurred that we'll quickly talk about here. This is coming from a series called Against All Odds. Israel Survives. It's a secular series. The journalist here is trying to find miracles, and here's miracles in Israel and so forth. And so this will come from here. We'll go to the video.
I told the kids an amazing story of survival to tell me. First, I'm driving up to the Golan Heights, land of gently rolling hills and beautiful valleys that form the northern border between Israel and Syria. I'm going there to meet David Yaniv, a veteran tank commander in the 1973 Yom Kippur War.
This must bring back a lot of memories for you. It's a business that's nostalgia for me, especially after so many years. Just to work in the same place where I used to be. You know, this area over there, just in front of us, there, we were on foot trying to find a way to get to this village. David Yaniv was a young tank commander during the Yom Kippur War. We met on a windswept hillside just above a battlefield that holds incredible memories for David and his comrades. So what do you do in a situation like that? You get on your knees when you preach. You take out your bayonet and you start fighting guns. This is a life-threatening situation. In other words, if you went forward, it was dangerous. What about just retreating?
Whichever way, whether it's to the left, to the right, backwards and forwards, I mean, it's mindful. We did the best we could. And we dug ourselves, we found the message to us, close of you, and then spending them. And it was a very slow process, but at this particular point, a very, very strong gust of wind came. Something that we could not explain before. I mean, it was so strong that we literally felt that we were flying away. That's how strong it was. And mines that were buried 25 centimeters meters in the ground just exposed themselves. And we didn't have to dig them out, we just walked through them. This is something I guess we hadn't seen the like stuff before. No way did we see that. Nobody could understand that. And of course, we didn't think of it as a miraculous thing from God or anything. We just thought, well, that was just a fluke, a wind that came, which we couldn't explain, and that was it.
Well, when did the thought first hit you that in life and did an act of God?
When we came back, we were alive. And we didn't touch ourselves before we were alive. And we like this didn't happen before. It didn't happen afterwards. The minute these minds were exposed, that was it. There was no moving. It was like the car off with the school.
What was the food for thought I need to take with me in order to get it the way you think it is?
Just believe that it could happen. Just believe.
To the Israelis, there is no more powerful symbol of the struggle that Israel has endured to survive than this place, the Armored Core Museum and Memorial of the Truth. But an equally powerful symbol of Israel's defiant struggle to survive is the man I'm going to meet today. Ali Kahanani is one of Israel's most famous war heroes. His personal story is legendary. In 73, you go to the battle against the commander, right? Tell me what happened to you in that war. I've come back in we lost the total of I had to 24 hours. My mission was to protect them and get the soldier. And it was hard. We fought for 4 days from Shabbat, Yom Kippur, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And the hardest day was Tuesday that we almost lost. Alani is given order by the Mission's commander to stand his ground in the valley below their position. He has only 7 tanks left to face the Syrian Armada. But when Yamish asks Alani over the radio how many tanks he has, he answers 41, just in case the enemy was listening in. What happened to you that day? Usually when you shoot the tanks, it's a range 2 miles. I had a situation that I found 4 tanks in the front of me, 25 meters, and I was alone. Scream, oh my God, they're shooting! I didn't know what to do. It was so close to me. I said, I'm going to kill you. I moved to another tank and I loaded with another shell and he shot it in. And when I put it and then got to the cellular, I saw man got the soldier tank looked straight in my face, started to shoot. And my gun was screaming, yes. No fire! And so the 1.5 minutes looked straight in my eyes and it was ready. This is some kind of situation how we fall on the Golan Heights during Yom Kippur. The battle for the Golan will ultimately come down to this final confrontation at a hilltop called Little Hermon, the valley below it that will be known forever after as the Vale of Tears. If the Syrians make it past this point, nothing will stop them from storming across the Galilee, destroying Tiberias, Haifa, and ultimately Tel Aviv. Alani's remaining tanks have all taken Syrian hits. Many have lost commanders or whole crews. Command discipline is low. Morale is failing. Defeat is in the air. Alani gives an order to his tank commanders to move forward. No one moves. He tries cajoling them, even starting forward himself. No other tank follows. Alani had faced death in 1967 and survived, just as David had once faced down a bear and a lion that attacked his sheep. Those young men refused to bow to fear. David stepped up to face Goliath. Alani ordered his tank to move forward. David declared, "I come not with sword and shield, but in the name of the God of Israel." He carried only 5 stones into battle with his giant. Alani moves forward with only 7 tanks to face the massive Syrian armada. Alani's crippled tanks stormed the hill before them. Looking down at the once green valley, now blackened with the smoldering remains of hundreds of burning Syrian and Israeli tanks from 3 days of fierce fighting. Living among them, hundreds of Syrian tanks continued their relentless advance. Al-Awlani orders his tanks to begin a barrage of gunfire on the advancing armada below, not expecting to stop them, but at least hoping to slow their advance long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Reinforcements don't come, but suddenly, to his amazement and without explanation, the Syrians seem struck with fear. The enemy armada begins retreating. Syrian soldiers begin running from the battlefield in all directions. Al-Awlani and his fellow soldiers are holding back the Syrian advance.
Let's take a pause right there for a moment. What has been later found out from their testimony, from the Syrian testimony, is that their eyes were unveiled and they saw an army of angels standing before them. And that, that's why they fled. That's why they fled. And it goes back to 2 Kings. God's still doing the same thing he's been doing in the Old Testament. Every miracle that he's done in the Old Testament is still in his toolbox today. Plus anything else you can think of, right? So something you think of in the Old Testament God's never going to do again, that's not true. 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 11. Here's a little story, again taking place in Syria, dealing with the king of Syria. There, Israel and Syria are at war. Again, therefore the heart of the king of Syria was sore troubled for this thing, and he called his servants and said unto them, Will ye not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? In other words, they were just had a bad attack from Israel, and the king of Syria is asking, how did they know where we were? How did they know this attack was coming? There must be a spy within our ranks. There must be a spy within our ranks. Verse 12, the one of his servants says, None, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet that is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that thou speakest in thy bedchamber. No, king, Elisha, the prophet, is telling the king of Israel what you're talking about in your bedroom. Verse 13, he said, Go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. Therefore sent him hither horses and chariots and great hosts, and they came by night and compassed the city round about. And when the servant of the man of God was risen early and gone forth, behold, a host compassed the city, both with horses and chariots. And the servant unto him said, Alas, my master, how shall we do? Elisha, is in bed, wakes up the next morning. What he finds out is every military and piece of equipment and enemy is at his doorstep ready to attack. So right in this situation here, these 7 tanks face an armada, hundreds of Syrian tanks coming at them. And this is Elisha's answer to his servant. They're saying, what are we to do? Verse 16, and he answered, Fear not, for they that be with us are more than they that be with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray thee, open his eyes that he may see. And the Lord opened the eyes of the young man. And he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. God's still doing that for Israel. God's still doing that for Israel. That happened here in this particular story.
What's that reference again?
2 Kings chapter 6. And you can read the whole chapter, but this verse 11 through 17. All right, here's another miracle which is particularly interesting for chapter 6 of 2 Kings. Particularly interesting for
Events unfolding thousands of miles away from the battlefield that many say is the real miracle story of this war. U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, turning down Golda Meir's request for arms to defend your country, is reported to have said, Let the Israelis bleed a little. Golda Meir is desperate. Without help, Israel will not survive many more days of the pounding assault from all sides, despite all the Al-Awlanis and those like him who are bravely defending their homeland and sacrificing their lives on all the front lines. And so she picks up the phone and calls the private line of U.S. President Richard Nixon. It is 3 o'clock in the morning. Television film producer and documentarian Bill McKay's investigation of the American role in the Yom Kippur War describes what happened when President Nixon took Goldwaiter's call in the middle of the night.
Mr. President, if you don't help us, the Jewish people will never survive. He said something interesting, if not strange. He said, you know, I could almost hear my mother's voice. She would tell me stories and read to me from the Old Testament, the heroes of the Bible. And one afternoon she said, Richard, someday you're going to be in a position where you can help save the Jewish people. And when that day comes, you must do everything in your power. And he said at that moment, I realized, maybe for the first time in my presidency, why I had become president of the United States.
And it was the largest airlift of armaments since World War II. The president kept his word. Everything Golda asked for, she got. Every weapon, every vehicle, every piece of equipment, all the ammunition to operate them. The virtual arsenal airlifted overnight to Israel's front lines.
Many military experts credit that decision, that request, at that moment, as the essential element that saved Israel from destruction.
And another striking parallel to David in the Bible, Richard Nixon turned aside the Goliath in indifference to Israel and his government, faced down a powerful Secretary of State who had turned against him and accepted the threat to his own presidency to save Israel in its hour of need. Before it was over, the Yom Kippur War demonstrated one of the most incredible turnaround victories ever recorded in military history. For his bravery and valor in the Vale of Tears, Avitur Kahari was dubbed a hero of Israel, who received the nation's highest accolade for courage in the defense.
I want to go back and revisit Richard Nixon's decision. So the war starts on October 6th. It's very bad. October 6th and 7th. Golda Meir makes a phone call on October 9th to President Nixon. President Nixon and promises Golda Meir all your aircraft and tank losses will be replaced. Everything you request, we will fulfill. October 10th, Washington authorizes the airlift of military supplies to Israel called Operation Nickel Grass. That's the operation name. Due to the threat, so at the same time, remember the 1973 oil embargo, it's all resulting from this war. The Arab nations said anybody's going to help Israel will pass an oil embargo. And so at this moment, all nations except Portugal said we're not helping Israel. Here we have an airlift that the United States is going to try to pull off but have no place to refuel midway. They're going from the United States all the way to Israel, right across the Atlantic Ocean, Mediterranean Sea, so forth. And they don't have a place to land, except for Portugal. And Portugal gives them permission to land in the Azores. So the Azores become a midpoint, refueling midpoint. And this is all because of the oil embargo that the Arab nations put on. So Portugal is the only one that allowed U.S. to refuel their planes to move the equipment. If you're familiar with, there's some aircraft history, the C-5 Galaxy, the big planes that transport. They're brand new and had trouble. And this is the first time they're being used operationally in a military operation. And so they're being put to use. I just read last night, Israel My Glory had an article on the Yom Kippur War, and this particular issue was mentioned. Of course, President Nixon authorizes, says we got to airlift whatever needs to be done to get equipment to Israel. He meets with Kissinger saying, how many of our big planes are you using? Kissinger responds, 2 or 3. Nixon says, no, use every single one we have and put them to use for airlift to Israel. And so this effort here was just monumental, what took place. All right, so to get the equipment over there, apparently we stationed American ships every 300 miles across the Atlantic through the Mediterranean Sea and had an aircraft carrier every 600 miles that allowed these planes to cross and protect them going through. So they were, as they were going through the Mediterranean Sea, of course, Arab nations in Africa and going further into the Mediterranean Sea, we had fighter jets escorting these cargo planes into Israel. As the planes got close to Israel, Israeli planes then escorted the rest of the way into Israel. This effort lasted for 32 days, and the airlift shipped 22,325 tons of tanks, artillery, and ammunition in 567 missions. Fighter jets were taken directly from U.S. Fighter jets were taken directly from U.S. fighter wings. So in other words, active wings, planes are going right from there to Israel to be used. Fighter jets coming off the assembly line were flown directly to Israel, factory to war.
Wow.
So U.S. insignias were on the planes when they land in Israel. They're taken off. Israeli insignias are put on the planes. The pilots are replaced, and they're put into battles within hours of arrival. It's just unbelievable, this effort that a whole military operation to get equipment to Israel and assist them in winning the war. All right, so that's the Yom Kippur War. The results of the Yom Kippur War is, well, Israel lost 2,500 soldiers. They actually lost 6,000 in the War of Independence. Syria lost 3,500. The Egyptian casualties are unknown. This led ultimately to the 1978 Camp David Accords, the full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Sinai, and the first peace treaty between Israel and Arab state. Because Egypt did this, Egypt was expelled from the Arab League for signing the treaty, but was readmitted in 1989. President Sadat was assassinated on the 8th anniversary of the war because of his working for peace. Syria lost more of the Golan Heights, and the UN buffer zone is created. Colonel Rafik Halabi was commander of the infantry brigade that collapsed under the Israeli breakthrough and was tried and executed before the war ended. The Israeli government was criticized for lack of preparedness, and Golda Meir and Moshe Dayan, who was Minister of Defense, resigned in 1974. Arab members of the OPEC reduced oil production, causing the 1973 oil crisis, where the U.S. supported Israel. And then the U.S. recognized its need for mid-air refueling and bases around the world to support airlift efforts. The things you see today, well, a lot of that is because of the result of us seeing the need then, and we didn't have it then. And so it's just an amazing thing. Interestingly, Israel has such little land, yet it's always trying to give it away to be recognized, right? Now, if you remember King Saul, Israel wanted a king, right? Israel wanted to be like all the other nations. Israel wanted to be recognized like all the other nations. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 19. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they say, "Nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles." And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. The Lord said to Samuel, "Hearken unto their voice." We want to be like all the other nations. Israel is not like all the other nations. Israel is not like all the other, even though we're going to see one peace treaty after another peace treaty, just so that, hey, recognize us as a nation. Recognize us as a nation, where clearly God has them in place. Clearly God is resetting and has reformed the nation. Well, our time has come to an end, apparently. That was the Yom Kippur War. All right, let's close in prayer, and now we'll have a fresh start next week. All right. Dear Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for your blessings. Lord, we thank you for Israel and your protection of Israel. And Lord, that you are still performing the miracles that you've always done, Lord. Lord, that you haven't stopped. And Lord, that you're always ever beside us, Lord. And Lord, may we take encouragement for that, Lord. And Lord, we thank you for all that you do. Lord, may you fill Pastor Allen with the Holy Spirit and the next hour to come. And Lord, just bless it in a mighty way. Do you see that? Amen.
Did you read anything about Bill?
Yes.
Whatever his name is?
Yes, that was pretty
You heard
cool.
about what happened here
Yes.
today, right?
You told me.
We can recognize Nixon